What's up, narrators? This is Mo, and we are back with the Narratives Per Possession podcast, where we connect you to better basketball narratives. And I am excited for tonight's episode because I get to return a favor. If you've kept up with anything I've been doing on the internet, on X and all that, I had the pleasure of doing a post-game pod a few weeks ago with my friend Zach Weiss of Across the Cavs, which I will do a formal introduction, but that builds up the anticipation story here. The Cavaliers are having quite an interesting season, and there's nobody else I can think of that I would want to talk through this franchise and sort of all the inner workings of what's going on with the Cavs right now than my friend Zach. So with that, I will quickly bring up one more thing before we get Zach on here. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video to continue to help grow the Narratives Per Possession podcast. And without any further delay, Zach, welcome to the stage, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, Mo, great to be here, man. Obviously, it's been an up and down season for the Cavs, but hey, every day that passes is another chance for something to happen that we have never seen before, and I'm sure we are going to get into all the nitty, gritty, witty, and not as litty. I'll never say that last one again. Yeah, with the Cavs.
Yeah, choose your superlative, choose your word, right? Like surprising, underwhelming. There are a lot of things that are in play for sure, and I imagine it has to be challenging because this is not like this is the first go around for this roster at this point. And when we talk about the principal core of it, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and certainly there's been health, unfortunately, involved with those four guys. But for the most part, I would imagine the consensus expectation for this roster, given what last season was for the Cavaliers with that just dominant regular season they had, was okay. We didn't get to what the ideal goal would have been at bare minimum, like an Eastern Conference Finals. They go out, they do some margin moves, right? They swap out Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball. Sure, we're going to talk about that in a bit, but in general, things just haven't like coalesced like you would want to. The Cavs at this point, I believe they stand at the 8th seed, right? They're 2017. So, some NBA teams would be quite happy to say they're 500, but I have to imagine for this Cavaliers organization, that was not the objective for the season, right?
Certainly not the objective, and let's just say, very happy they're not in the West right now, where the 7th seed, Phoenix Suns, are 7 games over 500. So you can only imagine the climb that Cleveland would have just to be top 6 in the West. Obviously, that's all hypothetical, doesn't matter. But yeah, it's been a season. Every player has had bad games for them. Garland got off to an atrocious start coming back from his foot. Evan Mobley's free throw percentage is way down. He's also had some poor games, although he's really played well coming back from that calf injury since Christmas. Jared Allen's finally been playing good, consistent ball for the first time all year. And truthfully, the only two Cavs that have really been there consistently outside of Mitchell and of late Garland have been Sam Merrill and Jalen Tyson, who have just become so invaluable to what they do. So, honestly, and I know we're going to talk about him, but it's been an interesting minute management year for Kenny, and I feel like what worked last year has not worked with this new group. Slightly different group, I should say.
Yeah. When we think about, so at this point, we're just about at the halfway mark of the season. Cavs will be at the 41-42 game mark in another 2 or 3 games, right? In sort of almost a mini retrospective of this first half of the season, where, from your point of view, have things sort of gone off the rails with this Cavaliers season thus far? Or like, are there patterns? Are there some obvious things more than just like, bad stretches of games? Where's the rubber not meeting the road for this team right now?
So I would first just say, as I'm looking at the games played, I don't know if you could find another team in the league where they don't have a single player that is currently on track to play at least 80 to this point in the year. Every single guy has missed a few games. No one has been there every night. Nobody has been fully healthy, which honestly is kind of surprising that's been the case. Now, most guys have just kind of missed a few games here and there, but maybe part of that could be lineup continuity. 12 different guys have started for Cleveland. Strus is still yet to debut, whereas last year they were pretty solid in his absence. They've clearly missed him this time around, and with the news coming out that it'll be at least 4 more weeks till the next update, it's going to pass the trade deadline by the time he even plays 5-on-5, which stinks because this is a team that could certainly make changes, and not knowing how he fits in will not help them make any of these decisions. But, honestly, I think you can look at a bunch of things. Talk about Mobley's free throw percentage drop. If you're getting to the line 5 times a game as a big man, you can't be shooting 63%. You definitely want to see that better. I'm looking at the Cavs here, and it says that they have the 14th hardest strength of schedule. I remember the loss to the Hornets. We did our post game, as you mentioned before, with the Bulls game, where the Bulls beat them twice. They nearly beat the Knicks. They beat the Spurs twice this year. I'm genuinely impressed and surprised based on how this year has gone that they're 2-0 against the Spurs. But I think the main areas it's gone off the rails have been consistency. I really don't like the minute distribution. It's not about how many everyone's averaging a game. Anytime Sam Merrill starts, I feel like he plays 6, sits for 10, plays 12, sits 8, plays 5. I want to see him in for a longer stretch and a shorter rest. I feel like he impacts the game so much, and that as much as I do love Sam Merrill, putting him next to Garland and Mitchell isn't necessarily winning basketball, because it still points to the flaw of there's no true starting 3 that they're comfortable with. Tyson's been great, but he hasn't been starting recently. Hunter is shooting 42% from the field, 31 from 3. Again, he's had good games, but he hasn't had a good season. So it really still goes back to the problem from last year that while Max is out, there's no starting 3. It had been Dean Wade. He's hurt again. So he's might miss more time with a knee issue. So they need to figure out who that 3 is. I don't know if trading guys is going to be with that focus of getting a 3, but I think it's the minute mismanagement combined with the lack of a small forward that just, even though they've got all these stars who are capable, that outside of Mitchell, nobody's dropping 30 consistently. No one's doing that for you. So I really just think it's the small forward thing still.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up. And in today's NBA, I mean, that is a crucial position on both ends of the court. I've for the duration of the Cavaliers having this core 4, I believe really that's always been an interesting dynamic of that seems to always been to the missing link for the Cavs roster to really figure out and take that next step, especially when we talk about getting to the playoffs, because you just need a dominant wing that's going to be stout on the defensive side, and a versatile player obviously in your offense, and especially with the way the offense in general in the NBA continues to push pace, but also just a return to physicality in terms of paint presence. Like you have to have a wing in that sense that can do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. You need the wing who can grab, as you mentioned, grab and push, transition, a little point guard, a little big man defense. And honestly, think about the teams that were the most successful last year. The Knicks with OG, McHale, even Josh Hart. They're all of them can kind of be anywhere from the 2 through 4. And they had that. Think about Indiana with Aaron Nesmith, and when he would come out with the physicality of Benedict Mathurin as the 3. Obviously, the Thunder have J-Dub, and if they take him out, then they still could, even if he's whatever he's doing, Lou Dort or Aaron Wiggins, Kenrich Williams, they have all these bigger body guys. Just think about all the teams. Denver obviously was a slightly different story with that last year. They didn't have a physical 3, and they still don't, although maybe they do with P-Watt now. But
yeah, Watson seems to be evolving into that.
Yeah, shout out to that game last night where they won. I don't know how. I watched the last 17 minutes. Every possession was just like the Nuggets actually have a good bet. Not going to lose focus. Like, we're talking narratives though. We're talking narratives. That is the win of the season by far in the NBA. I don't know that, and that's the same night that the Thunder beat the Hornets or lost to the Hornets by 24.
Oh, the
That's
Hornets beat
more
the
impressive.
Thunder. Yeah, so I didn't watch the Nuggets last night, but I was watching Hornets Thunder, and like that was genuinely a thrilling thing to see because at no point was I going to imagine, oh, the Hornets not only going to beat the Thunder, but they're going to be up by like 30 points against the
And
Thunder.
just talking about forwards, obviously I don't know whether Knipple Miller, who's actually the 2-3, but they've just got trustworthy guys at the position, and so many teams in the league do. And I know your Bulls are kind of in the same spot as the Cavs. Modest had some good run, but they don't have that. Or he might also be playing the 4. I haven't checked their last starting 5, but
He slid to the 3 because Kobe White and both Kobe White and Josh Giddey are injured, so they've actually sort of slid Modest to the 3.
Okay, so you have a good 3.
So he's getting running 3, which I prefer, frankly. I prefer seeing him at 3.
So you know what it's like to have a solid 3. Everyone else, no. And it's been tough. A lot of people could finger point Jared Allen, say his physicality, but I feel like over the last week and a half, he's been playing a lot better. The Cavs had a real good chance the other day and just fell short against Detroit. It's their own problem. They were down big. They dug all the way back, and bad possession at the end of the game for Mitchell. They just couldn't do enough. They tried. I give them a lot of credit. There's been a few of those games, but the way they finished last night, combined with the Christmas game and some others, you kind of just see the flaws, because that Knicks game kind of sums up the whole season. You have a really good stretch. You have the chance to win, and you make a few mistakes here and there. You can't get offensive rebound, or you can't get defensive rebounds. You're still getting out physical, which starts at that forward spot, someone to really change the tempo in the middle of the guards and the bigs. So that's where I want to see the improvement, because that's a big part of where it's gone wrong and how things have been managed.
Absolutely. There's a question that pops into my mind about the 3 spot. I want to put a pin in that though, because let's touch on head coach Kenny Atkinson for a bit, because again, we're at this midway point of the season. And from making sure like my memory is not hitting amnesia. I mean, Kenny is the reigning coach of the year at this point. He had solid first season coming in. How would you grade his coaching thus far? I mean, you talked about the minutes distribution. That's something you're not a fan of. What other aspects of his coaching, like, are pros or cons at this point with this roster?
Yeah, so honestly, he's not doing a bad job this year, certainly. And I think this is, and it's funny I'm about to say this, because I don't look at this with any team in any sport, but they did lose some key assistants after last season. Jordan Ott, you see what he's brought to the Phoenix Suns. That was one of his right-hand guys. Ott had a similar path to Eric Spoelstra. He was a video coordinator before he became a head coach. He's been around the league a long time. He was an assistant in a few different spots. He's still in his 30s, but he's come in and done a really good job in Phoenix. And Tamari Carroll, who was with him too, just that slightly different staff does play a role. I'm not knocking these Cavs assistants. Johnny Bryant always does a nice job with things. Maybe it's been management of minutes and trust. Maybe the Lonzo Ball situation has certainly been an unbelievable negative. For anybody that doesn't know how Lonzo Ball is playing this year, shooting splits are 30.4, 26.4, and 70%, but he takes less than a free throw a game. 4 boards, 4.5 assists, 1.3 steals, but 30%. Think about all the points. Think about all the points left on the board. And Lonzo, who ranks 9th on the team in minutes a game, is tied for 4th in turnovers, if that tells you anything. He can't protect the ball, doesn't know when to shoot, and honestly, he'll shoot the 3.
Yeah, he will shoot.
Simmons. He's Ben Simmons. He's the version of Ben Simmons of the last 2 years, not the Ben Simmons that was literally all NBA and all defense. Not that Ben Simmons. He's the Ben Simmons on the Nets who he might give you 8 rebounds and 10 assists if you give him enough minutes and touches. But that floor space is going to be awful. When you get to the last part of the game and the second half even, he's going to become useless for 80% of the possessions. Unless you're getting perfect off-ball movement every single time, it's just so hard. Because he doesn't have any pull. No one's following him. His shot's going to clank off. They don't get many offensive rebounds off of them. And it took until the last 4 games for Kenny Atkinson to realize that he has Craig Porter Jr., one of the most athletic guards in the NBA, 1.5 offensive rebounds a game, by the way, at 6'2", in just 17 minutes a game. If you per 36 that's over 3 offensive rebounds a night for your backup point guard. Not many guys are doing that at that position. And even though Craig, if you actually look, and I'm actually shocked to see this, he's only had 5 DNPs this season, all of them coach's decision. He's one of the few guys that has not been injured. I'm kind of shocked he's played that many games because I feel like he's been out so many different times in Lonzo's favor. But Craig's the difference maker. He doesn't need to score. He shoots 4 times a game on average. That means taking 120 shots in 32 appearances. He rebounds. He facilitates. He blocks shots. He gets steals. He's athletic. And having Craig in over him, I think, is somewhere finally that Kenny realizes that's what he should have been doing. And that's something for me that I've certainly enjoyed seeing. You know, obviously, not that he's had a very good year. Larry Nance, when he played, was only shooting 35%, 30 from 3, and 33% from the line on 5. Yikes. Okay. So Larry Nance wasn't doing much, obviously, but he was getting minutes. He was brought in to kind of help the playmaking. He was not doing that. I think recognizing Merrill and Tyson's improvement and rewarding them has been the best thing Kenny has done. They extended Merrill for a reason. He's gotten these minutes for a reason. But I think the biggest thing has been Porter and Ball. And finally, understanding that Craig is the guy, not Lonzo. I mean, if you look at the games Lonzo's played in, I'll tell you real quick, finish out this point. I'm going to go to Lonzo Ball's B-Ball reference page. When Lonzo is in the lineup, the Cavs are 13-14. They are 7-3 when he does not play. Lonzo has made 3 starts. 2 11-point losses to Toronto and a 14-point win against Miami. You know, Lonzo this year's only had 10-plus points twice. He has a positive net rating, and he has a negative net rating as much essentially as he has a positive. You know, he hasn't had a game where he's been better, plus 20 or better only once, plus 10 or better only 6 times. You think about a team with this offense and this spread, things don't go well when he's in. So understanding that Craig should be their backup and that guy continuing to move forward is something he's recognized, but that's been one of the big downfalls.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, as someone who's been deeply invested in Lonzo Ball over the last 5 years, whether I liked it or not, because of, you know, he had that horrific injury that sidelined him with the Chicago Bulls for 2 seasons. And it actually was a good news story when he finally did return to action last season for the Bulls. I don't recognize him in this Cavs roster at all, to be frank. Like, it seems like he has the yips for sure. He's lost his 3-point shot, which really was like, that was the anchor for him. Is he, you know, Lonzo Ball, you know, he may be a point guard, but he's not really a point guard in the functional sense of, he's not a half-court initiator. What Lonzo Ball was always effective at his peak, when he was like, you know, much more of a primary guy in a rotation. He was always great at finding those hit-ahead passes in transition, being a connector in the half court, and he could take the grenade if you needed it and nail those threes. You just don't have any of that anymore, and it's a rough watch, unfortunately, when he has no offense to bring to the table. Because I imagine I implicitly kind of expect he still can defend, but how has he been on the defensive side for the Cavs?
Well, so the defense hasn't been the issue. He's fine. He gives them a nice lift, and you talk about the passing. The surprising thing is he's actually been their de facto inbounder in key situations, just so that they have all their top scorers, Garland, Mitchell, Merrill, available to catch and put it up. Defense has been fine. It's not amazing. Sometimes kind of like the Drummond effect, where he's a good defender, but he'll overcommit a lot to trying to grab a steal or a quick block, and it puts them out of position if they don't make that play. So not the negative, but it's the off. I mean, the Cavs as a whole on defense this year have just not had it. open shooters constantly. They've opted to play zone to mask the size between bigs and smalls. And it just leads to open shots. Nobody on the team grabs those rebounds to finish possessions. That's why the Knicks won. Jordan Clarkson is not having that good of a season for the Knicks, but on Christmas, he looked like the best shooter in the league. That Christmas Day was one of 3 big games Tyler Kolek has had. You take away the bubble final. I'm sorry, the NBA Cup final and that Christmas game, and he's just an average backup. But on that day, he looked like that guy. And every time he plays the Cavs, Mitchell Robinson just sees barbecue chicken. He's like, all right, all you can eat night. And it stinks because 3 years ago, the Cavs got fried in round 1 by Mitchell Robinson on the offensive glass. And every time they play, well, obviously last year the Cavs won the whole series. They swept them. But even with that, they clearly haven't fully gotten over it because this year, what happens when they play? Opening night, it wasn't Mitch, but they weren't getting too many rebounds. It was better, but not great. Allen, now tonight, or 2 weeks ago, Christmas Day, rebound, miss, rebound, miss, rebound. And then all of a sudden, it's missed shot, rebound, kick, 3. That's not on Lonzo Ball. I know he's the one we're talking about here, but the whole team. And that's really just kind of part of it where they don't have enough guys that can other than Mitchell and now Strus, that's what's missing, to go up and just suction cup these rebounds so that they can just push. And they need to be better at that. I'm not looking at exact numbers. I don't have the full numbers in front of me here on how this has gone, but I just know that offense rebounds allowed have killed them. So they're 24th, by the way, it's like as a team in offensive rebounding, 22nd in total. And if you have 2 7-footers, why? Even when Mobley was out, they got Tomlin and Bryant to fill in. They have enough size. You need more rebounds than that.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, you could also, that might be another.
Sorry. Actually, real quick. Sorry, I was looking at it incorrectly. The Cavs are actually 9th in rebounds, but they're 24th in offensive rebounds allowed, which is kind of what I was saying. So I have that mixed up, but the point stands.
Yeah, your defense. Yeah, so to your point, the defensive rebounding is not there, which that's a huge hole in your defense if you can't secure rebounds. And the funny thing, the contrast that the Bulls, for that hot stretch that the Bulls had at the beginning of the season, Josh Giddey and Nikola Vucevic looked like invincible defensive rebounding combination. So there's a lot to be said about, like, if you can't clear rebounds on the defensive end, it's going to be a challenge to actually build just a solid fundamental defense.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, all the complicated analytics and playmaking and schemes of basketball, but at the end of the day, it's just get a stop, grab a rebound, push. And they're not doing that properly this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly. The thought I had on going back to the small forward concern, I would have had some optimism if I was a Cavs fan about the addition of Lonzo Ball, because the thing is, again, he's a point guard, but he really is wing size as well. I mean, he's 6'6", he's got size and strength, but if he's physically, I mean, you mentioned the defense is not the concern, but Lonzo Ball really is on paper the prototypical quote unquote 3-and-D wing sort of archetype, and it's unfortunate that it just hasn't landed for him on the offensive side. I'm curious, like, actually, when I think back to that Bulls the Bulls Cavs home and home, I was really impressed with Jalen Tyson. I know I mentioned that on Across the Cavs as well.
Yeah.
Where is he? Because the second game that Tyson had against the Bulls, it wasn't as quite. It seems like he might be having consistency issues despite his evolution, but I know he's also young, right?
Yeah, so he was a 3-year college guy. He just turned 23 in December. Man, there's some consistency issues, if we look at it, and if we go to he's had, let's see, it's going to do a quick breakdown. He's had 20 points on 4 occasions, double digits on 21 occasions. They certainly are. They're 17 and 15 when he plays. He made 21 starts, 4 double-doubles. He's brought a lot. He's got multiple blocks in 5 games. The steals have been there. He's got at least 3 steals in 6 games. Some of it's consistency. Some of it's the minutes. feel like on Christmas Day he should have played more. He's got 13 games where he's logged at least 30 minutes. I'm actually looking, and in those games, the Cavs actually do a lot. The Cavs are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh boy! All right, Cavs are only 5-8 when he plays 30 minutes. Although I don't think that's on him. I think you can look at any player, look at a whole lot of numbers, and make a lot of claims. But I think that kind of just says who's he in with? Was Garland out in those games? Was Allen out or Mobley out in those games? I don't know the lineup where Tyson fits the best as of yet. I think it does matter who you're on the court with when you're coming in your second year and figuring it out. But one thing about Tyson, he's the only one that's been keeping guys honest, calling guys out. Yeah. So when they were losing, who took to the press to say, hey, we got to be better. We should be doing this. It was Jalen Tyson. And there was no bigger supporter for what he was saying than Donovan Mitchell. So he has accountability to be in your second year, first year as a regular, holding everyone accountable for things like that. Just shows where he's come, how effective he is. I don't think he's the issue in any way. Honestly, I just feel maybe it just matters who he's in with and matchup based, because not all 30 minutes are created equal. If he's starting, playing 8, then playing another 8, versus maybe he's playing 25 off the bench, but he plays most of the first half. And these minutes are just so – Kenny hasn't changed his pattern in 2 years. He hasn't. The one thing, maybe the only difference between Kenny and JB when they were both in Cleveland and just kind of finishing on these rotations and how it's an issue, JB shrunk his significantly in the playoffs. It was always going to be Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, 2 at a time in the game with 2 other reserves and then 1 more. JB went 8 deep often. Those last couple of years, Kenny still really hasn't done that. He really likes his bench, and there's no problems with that, given that the Cavs do have a lot of playable guys. But I feel like there's still just some issues here where you see that in Golden State, where he still can't decide who to play on what night, so he just plays everybody. And there's nothing wrong with that in a way. If you're winning a lot, they're not the only team that has proven successful at rotating everybody in has been OKC, in my opinion. Like, everybody getting in. They don't have a weak link if they're playing with the top guys. But that hasn't been the case. I think it's these rotations that just it doesn't change. 9 guys early on, a 10th guy comes in the second quarter. Nothing against that. Tomlin's had some big games in that role. Proctor's had good games in that role. A number of different guys on this team have been that 10th guy. Craig's been that 10th guy. Nance was previously that 10th guy. Bryant was that 10th guy. But you got to change something. The Cavs don't have a winning streak longer than 4. And if you have aspirations to go run the gauntlet in the Eastern Conference in any way, and you haven't shown that you could string together 2 weeks worth of wins one time, or even a 5-6 game streak after last year's run, then things should change.
Yeah. And, that's a good segue, and we probably can pull it all together, the conversation with this. We're now just about a month away from the NBA trade deadline. And we're talking about a Cavs team that, again, is sitting in the 8th seed when certainly, again, the expectations should have been, top 4, gunning for another 1 seed, right? What should be the game plan for the Cavs going into this trade deadline? Because certainly, like, nothing, like, the status quo can't be the option, right? Like, something has to change, to piggyback on what you just said. Starting with the core 4, I mean, that seems like that has to be on the table this season. Like, is there a change that has to be made starting with that core?
So, it's definitely different than last year. They flipped LeVert and Niang to get Hunter. I think there was a pick in there too. Obviously, you had 2 guys in LeVert and Niang who had both played very well, but weren't doing it every night. You wanted a guy a little more established and a little bigger. Although I think Niang's actually taller than Hunter if we do the math. But it's tricky. Obviously, I don't think you move either guard. I think Garland, as being healthy, is certainly shown flashes again. You're certainly not going to get peak Garland while Mitchell is playing this well. I just think you need to have good second option Garland, even third option Garland, who can take 15 to 17 shots, dish 6 to 8 assists. He'll throw your lobs. He'll give you space. He'll break down the defense, take the floater or kick it out. And I think he does a lot of positive there. Mobley's not going anywhere. So I think the only conversation would be with Jared Allen. But the question is, with him being up and down, and he's still got a few years on his deal at $30 million plus, what team would take a flyer? It's less who you need to trade, and it's more what can you get back in a trade. What team would pull the trigger? Obviously, we know the Indiana Pacers are a team that wants to revamp it and go straight back to the finals next year when they get Tyrese back. Kind of crazy that 6-30 is the number. And look, injuries have killed him. And rumors that are swirling that they don't want to pay Mathurin. They're going to trade him, which honestly is unfortunate with the apron. Just after what he did in the playoffs last year. Obi Toppin was amazing in the playoffs. I think he got hurt 3 or 4 games in. He still hasn't come back yet. This time around, the Miles Turner hole is a lot bigger than they expected. Obviously, Thomas Bryant went to Cleveland. Jay Huff blocks shots and makes threes, but he's not a starting center in the NBA. He's a good backup center. Like him as a backup last year would have been a dream for Indiana, playing 15 minutes a night. There's a hole there. Outside of Siakam and Halliburton and Nembhard going into next year, who knows what they have. They're a team that certainly needs a starting center. Before the draft, you could have argued the Pelicans, and they have so many wings that they could trade to Cleveland that could help them, from an Herb to a Murphy to a Bay. And obviously with Bay, you'd have to add a big salary to match that. But I don't see them doing anything at the center spot. I could see them flipping Looney somewhere, but that doesn't do anything for the Cavs just because they already have Misi and they already have Derek Queen now, and DeAndre can be the vet for the year, and they could bring someone new in next year to be that once he likely retires. You know, a lot of teams are set. You could have argued maybe Toronto, but Jakob Poeltl's come into his own. Now they got Murray Boyles, Mamu Kelishvili. They actually did a really nice job at the center spot. The Bucks certainly haven't been great with Miles. I don't think it would make any sense to consider a swap if the money even matches. I don't think anyone's ever said those words, Turner for Allen. I don't think that happens either. But they are a team that needs a center that fits better, and Turner's been an awful fit for that team. You know, maybe Chicago, you guys obviously need your starting center of the future, but the Vucevic would be awful for Cleveland because that would make the defense worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. Do they want a center? If they swing down to the power forward spot, still, who needs Allen? Who's going to trade a starting caliber forward and potential drafts anything or a young piece? Like, would the Wizards want to pair Sarr with Allen? They're trying to get Trae Young. Maybe they have other big salaries they want to move, but they don't really have another one besides CJ, and he wouldn't fit in Cleveland anyway. So I do, as I'm sure we all do, I've written a lot of articles for Heavy in the last 2 months on trade hypotheticals, where I head to SpoTrack, type in some things, and just let the magic happen. And if it's reasonable, I let the words come out from my brain onto the sheet and say, does this work? Yes. Here's why. Will it happen? Unlikely, but it's a world where it might if there's a need. You know, I don't know what that is. I wish if Portland didn't have Klingon, I wish there's a world where the Cavs could swing for a Jeremy Grant for Jared Allen. I think those match, or if you attach another small salary here or there, but they've got Klingon, who's one of the best defensive centers in the league this year, and they don't have to pay him for 2 more years. So why would they take a big contract? So I don't know. The Warriors obviously need a starting center, but how would Kuminga fit on the Cavs? I don't think bringing that personality in would help. So that's where I stand. I think that whole spiel is to say you have to check the market. You have to see what works. You have to see where the money makes sense, where the fit makes sense. And if you find a team that wants Allen as a starter and they're willing to fork it over, I say, okay. I say, we'll miss you. Say you were a fan favorite. So you're going to get a hell of a video tribute when you come back. But we need to win. And if they don't, I will say, Mo, and I'll throw it right back to you. I would say if they don't flip things, and they keep them all, I'll say that's fine. But then in the summer, you better be comfortable making any and every move to keep Donovan here beyond next season.
Yeah, is he going into his expiring year next season?
Next year at the end, there's a player option. So the 3-year extension, I believe, kicked off this year. This year, next year, guaranteed. Then there's that, I believe, I'm going to double check this, but I believe there was a player option for 27, 28.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's got to be urgency about really piecing
Correct.
together a roster that can be all in.
Yeah, player option for 27, 28.
Yeah. You know, I would, there's one hypothetical that pops in my head. Just, I mean, I don't know if this works. I would have to get in the spell track myself and see if this would work. But just the surface level dynamics of it would be an interesting story if it did happen. What if, and this is because I'm also on a Michael Porter Jr. agenda, you send Jared Allen back to the Brooklyn Nets to get Michael Porter Jr. because in a lot of ways that's probably it does two things, I think, for the Cavs. If you're able to acquire Michael Porter Jr. From, say, Allen, that's certainly wing depth that you would quickly get. I mean, it would be a matter of of course, he has to be healthy, but what Michael Porter Jr. is doing with the Brooklyn Nets right now is quite impressive. And I've made the case actually that the Pistons need to get him. So I would also throw that out there, something like get him so the Pistons don't get him. And it could be something to potentially get you back more in the top 6 stratosphere.
Yeah, so interesting move. I've been trying to load Spo Track. It's been very slow. Before I answer, I do want to check because I do have it queued up. We're going to go start trade. Hold on. If it's fast enough, if it's not here in 5 seconds, I'm just going to answer with assuming it's good.
Yeah.
Spo Track doesn't want to work. Oh, here we go. All right. Oh, I think he's too expensive. He's making 38 mil. And Allen is only making 20. So that is quite a bit off. It's an 18 million difference. Okay. The Cavs would, oh boy, hold on. Let me see if this would. Oh wow, it doesn't even work if you add Strus. Okay. So yeah, actually I'm just curious here. Wow. Okay, yeah, I don't have a way to. They don't have the money to even this out. In a world where they made that trade, though, hypothetically speaking, I think it would certainly give them an amazing score. But are you going to get Denver Porter, where he just has to be catch and shoot man? Or are you going to let Porter be half of this Nets version where it's like, we got Dom, we got Darius, they can have possessions off, just hit your shots, but please play defense. Use your length, block some shots. Let's remember, for all the negatives that he does bring to a team, even before Brooklyn, 3-point maestro, NBA champion, overcame back problems and is still able to play through injury and be consistent as he did in last year's playoffs. Yeah. So I would say I would welcome his addition, but also be wary of some of the negatives and red flags. Obviously, it's hypothetical, but people have thrown out the Garland-Porter deal. I would never do that. I wrote about it just to entertain the idea. It would never work.
Yeah. Well, I had Lucas Kaplan, who covers the Brooklyn Nets for Nets Daily, on earlier, and we talked about, so Porter has his reputation for a lot of his social media and his timeline rhetoric. However, I mean, I would give him credit. I mean, since the season started, it seems like he's been pretty locked in, and at least purely from a basketball standpoint, what has caught my eye and certainly changed my perception of him from what we all know as Denver Nuggets Michael Porter is just the relentlessness he has being the high usage primary featured guy now, where he's not a catch and shoot dude apparently, and that's intriguing. And I would suspect if a team's trading for him, if they're doing this the right way, they should be trading for this Michael Porter Jr. we've seen now in the Barclays Center for half a season, where it's get him to be your paint presence. Get him to be the guy who's going to put defenses in rotation. And in a lot of ways, that might actually be the secret sauce to unlock the best of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Again, a hypothetical, right? Because then it that's a spacing function. That's a spacing hack for those two guards where as much as you like their scoring, I mean, given their size, sometimes that could be a challenge, trying to get them downhill reliably, especially in a tough physical playoff series.
No, definitely. I think if I don't know that he gets. There's a world where he gets traded. There's also a world where the Nets say, "Hey, we're still not winning a lot. We got some picks here. We got the Knicks picks. We got the Suns picks, and we got a lot here. Maybe we want to keep him and build it for next year. Maybe I probably see a world where they're trading T-Man. I don't know what they're going to get for him. Where they're trading Nick Claxton. I don't know who their starting center becomes at that point, unless they're trading Sharp. There are some rumors the Cavs traded Wade for Sharp or Wade for Bay, although the Wade for Bay doesn't make any sense for the Pelicans, who don't have their pick. And Dumars is a Bay guy. I think he's traded for him 3 times.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see what ultimately happens there. But I think for Porter, if they do keep him, that he can really be their guy. They haven't had a guy that they brought in that was better than expected like this. And obviously they brought last year's nostalgia was D'Lo. We'll see who this year's nostalgia is, because the Nets are certainly going to try to make a nostalgia trade for the second half of the season. As good as they have been over the last month and a half, they will not be in the play-in. I think that's a given, unless one of these rookies turns into a star. Dayoman, Wolf have had moments. Brother Wolf's been way down recently. KD had something to say about, yo, Wolf, what was that, man?
Yeah.
I don't know what my voice did there. But we'll see what they do. Porter, I think, is a winning player. Now, I think he's proven it, even with some of the possession ends here, which he's acknowledged. I think he's grown a lot. I think he takes much smarter shots. And it's amazing how open he's able to get with defense a lot tighter than it was in Denver. I think that speaks volume. So if the Cavs could get him without a major sacrifice, that's great. Unless maybe the only alt, and the Nets have no reason to do this, would be Ball, Hunter, and maybe a pick. Although there's no reason for the Nets to do that, because DeAndre Hunter will not be a superstar in the Nets like Porter's been. Lonzo Ball is just going to get LeVar in New York, which will get him on all the talk shows. And the pick is so far away that it would not help them. So I don't see a world in business.
Yeah, that's probably the rub more than anything. I mean, Brooklyn's going to charge a premium price in terms of draft capital, I'm sure, for Porter.
They should.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap here. It's always a blast, man, when we get to chat and talk hoops. So definitely appreciate you making your nearest per possession debut. Before we get out of here, please plug away. Besides Cavs, you write a lot of great, just general NBA coverage as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So anyone, you can find me on Twitter. You're never going to hear me call it X, unless you're in a corporate setting. It's X. Wink. No, it's Twitter. It's still Twitter. Find me on Twitter at Across Cavs, on Instagram at Across the Cavs. If you want additional basketball content, find me on TikTok at ZachWeiss23, posting anything to do with NBA, NFL, big news, opinions. Get my hoop grids in there. If you want to follow the pod, go to Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Across the Cavs. And if you ever want to hear any interviews with sports people, writers, authors, content creators, you could find the Zach with an H pod. That's at Zach with an H pod, no spaces, on Instagram and on Twitter. And you can type in Zach with an H pod. You'll find me on Spotify and Apple. But Morris, keep up the great work. Always love talking ball with you. And hopefully sometime, we can get, for the first time in 11 years, we could get a Cavs-Bulls playoff series. We could do these live playoffs where everybody's stopping what they're doing to hear what we have to say.
That would be amazing. Yeah, it would bring back a lot of memories across the board. Yeah, like the world needs a Bulls-Cavs series. It's been far too long.
Yes, it has.
Well, thank you. And I'll just quickly say, hey, again, please like and subscribe and leave a comment on this video. And, appreciate everybody rocking with Nearest Per Possession. Please help to continue this YouTube channel grow. And until next time, everybody have a good night. And thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
All right.